Cobra! La 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 la!
And that sound means it's the start of another Missal for the masses. I'm your host, Gary, and this is the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod. This is the podcast that's centered around the vehicles, playsets, and even trailers of the G.I. Joe, a real American hero toy line from 1982 to the present day. We also talk G.I. Joe and connected comics, and sometimes figures and other military and adventure toy lines. Today, Casey's on special assignment, so I'm here at the Motorpod, manning the fort, so to speak, and on this mission all by myself. But Casey will be back shortly after he's successfully completed his assignment. My assignment here has just been preparing for 2 toy shows coming up. The first one, June 1st, is the New Haven Comic and Collectible Spectacular. It's back. I'm going to get another table and sell some stuff to lessen the sting on the wallet of my next show, the one that I've been looking forward to all year, even last year as well, is Joe Fest 2025. And got the booth and just getting ready to set up and have all sorts of cool stuff there. Basically t-shirts. And working with Sal, who was on the last Missal, with about the 1984 Manta. So we've had some ideas. We've been bantering back and forth and looking forward to having a great time and just hanging out with people over the course of June. So that's really all I've got going on. And that brings us to tonight's topic, the 1992 Cobra Parasite. And if you're new to the show, we typically look at the box of the Cobra Parasite, and then we go into the driver. If there was one available, the Parasite, there is no driver. So then we look at the blueprints, and then we talk about the toy itself. But before we begin all of that, let's take a look at the creators at Hasbro that brought it to us, and this information is brought to me by Volume 12 of Creating G.I. Joe by Dan Klingensmith. Get the books while they're available. They're a tremendous resource. If you like this kind of stuff, I highly recommend them. So in the book itself, we learned that it was designed by Bill Young, and the Parasite is designed to be an armored personnel carrier that, according to Bill, would hold new Cobra troops on the outside and act as soft armor. The biggest features were the rubber band catapult and the massively overgunned pilot's ball turret in the front of the Parasite. The book also shows a test shot of the Parasite in darker orange and blue instead of purple. Of course, the wheels are black, and the sketch, the final art for the packaging is also presented as well. So speaking of the final art for the packaging, thanks to 3D Joes for having wonderful images. Also the fact that my Parasite doesn't have any stickers on it. I know I have a sticker sheet somewhere for this that's unused. And I just didn't want to put the original stickers on it. It's kind of hard to something that's 30 plus years old, and now you have to modify it. It's just, I don't know. But then again, I will have no problem buying some Toy Hack stickers and stickering it up. I know it's a conundrum for me even as well. So let's take a look at the top of the box. We've got G.I. Joe, a Cobra command weapon and Cobra enemy, as we've seen since the early 80s. And then with an asterisk, with bomb-firing catapult. And the Parasite, the armored personnel carrier, transports up to 17 figures. So that's a pretty hefty haul. We looked on a previous Missal at the 1983 APC, which holds 28. Then we get ages 5 and up, figures sold separately, some assembly required, no tools necessary. Colors may vary slightly from photograph. Other weapons do not shoot, and that's the asterisk. So the bomb-firing catapult does shoot, but the other weapons don't. Well, that's a good thing. So we get to see a good right-hand side shot of the Parasite. We've got 3 Heat Vipers from 1992 riding the side. We have Destro looking very much like his 1983 or 1991 counterpart, manning the turret. I just say that about Destro because he does have the red epaulets on his shoulders, but that 1991 was a return to form for Destro. And interestingly enough, Destro was not offered in 1992. The Parasite was also only available in 1992. It was not available for pre-order in 1993. So it was a lot of these 1990s figures and vehicles, 1 year only. Again, we get a right-hand side shot. We have the Gatling gun shooting in the rear of the Parasite. We got the catapult launching a missile, the bomb-firing catapult, and it just basically looks like a throwing star on steroids. And, the guns are blazing in the front of the Parasite as it travels onward. And you even get a little dirt kicked up by the 2 wheels you see, get some movement lines. It is an absolute action-packed shot of the toy. Then we flip the box around and we get to see essentially one of the earliest versions of the Parasite, if not the final production. The only thing different from the final production piece is the rubber band used on the bomb-firing catapult, from my eyes. So going around the box, we have, again, the asterisk with bomb-firing catapult. We have top-mounted bomb-firing catapult, pivoting hatch, which is funny because the pivoting hatch is on the opposite side. It's hinged on the top, but the hatch opens on the left side, where both shots of the front of the box and the back of the box are of the Parasite's right side. We can carry up to 17 troops, revolving front and rear machine guns, rotating laser chin gun, and then we got the caption, when Cobra moves out, they move out in force. The Parasite is the only Cobra transport vehicle that can take a direct hit from the G.I. Joe battle wagon and still keep trucking over the battlefield. And the battle wagon, as covered in a much earlier Missal, is from 1991. So here's another instance on the box referring to a previous year's toy. So maybe they were hoping that there'd be some leftover clearance Destros and battle wagons when you were buying the Parasite. Also on the box, we have 2 inset pictures. One is top-mounted catapult really fires bombs and then holds up to 6 Cobra troopers inside the hatch, and it is showing incinerators. Another toy from 1991. So that's leading me to think that this was a 1992 vehicle where they were using 1991 toys that they had on hand for doing these photo shoots. Or maybe this was originally planned as a 1991 toy, but then they just changed the artwork on the top of the box to include the Heat Vipers. All purely speculation, but I would say this, that, Cobra Troops, you can't go wrong with whatever Cobra Troops you're putting in a transport. You know what I mean? A lot of Vipers, the best year for Vipers are from 1989 to 1991. So you got lots of Vipers, and, that's what the Parasite's for, is for transporting these guys to the front lines. But of course, we get ourselves to the blueprints of the Parasite. And so the Parasite blueprints have 9 talking points about the toy itself. And it starts basically as we work from the front to the back of the toy. Number 1 is the rotating laser chin gun with heat sensor aiming. So this is like Predator vision. So there's probably a monitor in the gunner's seat, and there's kind of something molded in there. I didn't see a decal in any of the pictures that would be there, but that would be something in the early days. You'd have like a little targeting sensor and, like I said, Predator vision. So it's going to be a thermal image, like red for hot and blue for cold. But anyway, the chin gun with heat sensor aiming is the lower 4 guns on the bottom of the nose turret of the Parasite. All molded in plastic. You get some piping on the outside, and you have some reinforcement ridges. And, it's just a good, it's a laser gun. I love lasers. Lasers belong in G.I. Joe. Then we get to 2, the revolving front and rear machine guns with injection cooling. So I think it's funny it's saying the front and rear machine guns, but it doesn't point out the rear machine gun. So it's talking about these 4 guns in the front that pivot up and down. They, obviously the whole front ball assembly pivots left to right. The chin laser guns are just level. They only shoot straight. They don't elevate. But the machine guns in the front elevate up and down and go left and right. Now, all these guns in the front, they move left to right as an assembly. So they're not independent of one another. So if Destro's driving or whomever's driving, they are aiming all 8 barrels in the same direction, with the machine guns being able to elevate. Now, it's also talking about the rear machine gun. Now, this is something that I should have mentioned earlier, but the rear gun is a Gatling gun. And in the painting on the front of the box, it's showing all the barrels firing at once. And Gatling guns, only one barrel fires at once as the rest of the barrels rotate, allowing the barrel to cool in between rounds, lengthening the lifespan of the barrel. And you even got in the back, you even have this like sighting system. So I would say it's that thermal, the heat sensor imaging again on the back gun as well. And, you could say that it is being targeted by the driver up front, or maybe by one of the 6 Cobra inside the Parasite. We get number 3, the driver's cockpit with HAL steering. This is not the HAL from 1982, the heavy artillery laser. This is something else entirely. Putting me on the spot, trying to figure something out for the HAL acronym, I could say highly articulating leveling steering. If you have a better idea, feel free to comment wherever you find this podcast, on Spotify, YouTube, or send an email to Chaplain Joe Pod, or find me on social media at Chaplain Joe Pod, Facebook, X, and Instagram. So that's the steering, and it's kind of forced, and I'd be interested in seeing what other people think it is. We're still in the ball turret for point number 4, the semi-auto targeting. So I guess it's saying that the targeting just automatically picks a target. I guess it would be something similar or derived from the BATS program from 1986 and 1991. Hopefully the driver is able to identify friend or foe. We get number 5, the transport compartment that holds 6 figures. Hey kids, have you found out that this thing holds 6 figures? But the box says 17. All right. Anyway, number 6, we get the 3 multi-explosive gyro catapult bombs. Now, the bombs themselves are molded in the same purple as the rest of the purple plastic, and they just have a little slot in the bottom for it to fit on top of the catapult. And you have 12 fins that go around the perimeter of the disc, and you got some nice ridge detail for the fingers to grab. So if your hands are dirty or slippery, you could still grab onto this and put it on the spring-fired catapult. Now, I'm all for action features here at the Chaplain Systems Motorpod. I love the 90s. I love spring-fired. I love finger flick technology. It is fun. It is cool to knock over your figures when they're not on figure stands. Although some of the spring-fired weapons like the Brawler from 1991 can do some damage on its own. Now, I like the catapult. I think it's fun. And the interesting thing about the catapult is it's kind of a reuse of mold. It was originally used in 1991 with the incinerators. So I think this is a smart reuse. I think it's also funny that we've seen elsewhere in G.I. Joe through the years of reuse of vehicle parts as action figure assemblies. But this is one of the first ones that I can think of where the action figure assembly or the action figure accessory found its way onto a vehicle. And it's fun. I love it. Then we get number 7, the pivoting armor-plated troop hatch. So that is the purple hatch that flips up from the left side up there. It's kind of a gull wing door. Now, the interesting about the gull wing door is it does have some molded features. It has some grating, and it does have a handle to help lift up and release the latch. But it has just great detail. I like the fact that it has 2 gas cans on the opposite side of this armored hatch. So if a tracer round hits the gas can, well, hey, the occupants inside will just get really hot and cooked. We get to number 8, the running boards on sides and back hold more figures. So again, it's the 90s. The suspension of disbelief is getting a little less blurred. So we have 4 pegs on the left and the right of the running boards. We have 4 pegs on each running board, left and right. So there's your 8 figures. And then you have 2 pegs on the rear bumper / running board. There's another 2 figures. So you have the driver, that's 1. You have the 6 occupants, that's 7. You have the 8 that fit on the sides, there is 15. And then you got 2 on the rear. That's 17 figures you can have motoring down on the Parasite. Now, just looking at the back bumper real quick, one lost opportunity is no tow hook. I know tow hooks were, getting kind of phased out. The trailer side of G.I. Joe was waning, but just a perfect opportunity to provide, total line compatibility. Just missed there. And then finally, get to number 9, the top-mounted Mega Blast bomb firing catapult. Well, I guess I got a little ahead of myself earlier, but yeah, so the catapult does have a little latch that you pull back and it launches, and it has a black rubber band if you have the original rubber band. And if not, well, not a huge loss. You just get another rubber band and wrap it around. And, that's the 9 talking points for the Cobra Parasite. So I went looking through the comic book, and I sort of had some Mandela effect talking about this, that this was around the return of Transformers Generation 2, that it was somewhere featured in that timeline. And scrolling through the comics, didn't find any instance of the Parasite being used in the comics. Now, looking at the Deke cartoon series, I am still working my way through that, so I don't know if the Parasite makes an appearance in the Deke cartoon series. So, with the media kind of out of the way, now it's just time to look at the toy itself. So, overall, this is one of those few vehicles that I kind of was attracted to, and I kind of wanted to talk about it just because I like the main attraction for me on this toy is the muted yellow, the orangey yellow, and the purple combination. It just stands out. Now, I know if you're into Little Green Army Men, this isn't exactly the toy for you. This doesn't scream terrorist weaponry, but to me, this just screams 90s Joe. And 90s Joe for me is all about Andrew Wildman and Phil Gosier and just those comics and just the bright colors. And I was 12, 13. I was 12 when this toy came out. So this is like right up my alley, and I love it. I like the details on this. This is a toy that has, little suspension bits over by the front tires. It has, on the right side, there is a molded in sledgehammer. On the back, you get some like exhaust, and you get some like suspension elements again, and some like air cooling fins. So overall, there's a lot of detail on the plastic. Now, you don't have an undercarriage. You don't have a finished undercarriage on this toy. It is semi-hollow because, again, it's designed to hold 6 figures on the inside. It could be worse as a toy, but I'm not going to fault it for not being better than what it is. In 1992, G.I. Joe is moving to a action figure line rather than a vehicle line being supported by action figures. So this totally makes sense that this thing was corners cut, but the cost cutting wasn't adverse to the toy itself. The toy still has playability. The the rotating turret in the front, the elevating cannons, the catapult. So, and you got the rotating Gatling gun on the back. So this thing's armed to the teeth, and it holds a lot of figures. So even though they're hanging on the outside mostly, even if you don't do that, you put, let's say, Firefly, 92 Firefly in the front, and you put a complement of 1991 bats. Or heck, you get the mail-away bats that were available with Overkill in the early 2000s, the Inferno bat and the black, the alternate colored version of the 1991 bat. It all fits in here. It makes sense. Heck, have Overkill drive this. And, this is the perfect deployment toy. You can throw 94 Vipers in it. It is perfect for that 1990s G.I. Joe play. Now, would you put an 86 Viper in there? Would you put Cobra Troopers in there? I mean, they'll fit, but does it fit the aesthetic? Well, this is where, even I will agree that, this doesn't fit very well with the earlier G.I. Joe line. And this toy is very of its time in the G.I. Joe line. But playability and the mold, it works. Looking at the stickers of the Parasite, you get a nice Cobra logo with like a bug, where the gills or the scales of the Cobra hood is replaced with that bug and, the Parasite name. It's a good, disturbing image that, conveys its own division in the Cobra army. You have like hydraulics and then you have like toolkits and stuff, but it works. It's not a lot. It's not like you have 100 no steps to put on this because you actually have steps. It works for me. You have two little green headlamps in the front that go on either side of the elevating cannon. They kind of look like bug eyes. And, when you start looking at it like that aesthetic, it does. The Parasite does look like an insect. It's kind of like an Insecticon from Transformers. So I like it. It's just one of those things. It's fun. You got a reasonable amount of detail. You got plenty of room for storage, loaded up with bats, loaded up with, all those 1990 Vipers, 1991 Vipers. You have your Desert Scorpion, you have your Heat Vipers, your Incinerators. I don't know if you could put your 1991 Snow Serpents in there, but, you do you. Another good one for this is the Frag Viper. And, 1992, there really wasn't too many army builders. 1993, you'll get your Yellow Alley Vipers that would totally work with this. And as I was trying to remember the comics from those 120s, it was kind of a shame because Larry Hama relied heavily on the use of the Paralyzer as like troops, transports and stuff, and the ninjas are jumping back and forth. It is a more open vehicle, but, there was definitely time when the artist could have used the Parasite. Oh, speaking of other troop builders from, heck, the neo-modern era, Big Shoulder era, Medi Vipers. Bring this out, have the Medi Vipers deploy to rescue Scarlet after she's been stabbed next to the heart by Snake Eyes. So, yeah, you got this. This works not so well for the up to like 1988, those Cobra Troopers. But once you get into 1989 and onwards, this vehicle fits perfectly with the thematics of the G.I. Joe universe. Now, rating this vehicle on a scale of 0 to 5 gyro catapult bombs, with 0 being avoid this like the plague and 5 being you should buy so many of these Parasites, you should army build it of itself. I'm going to say that this is a solid 3 gyro catapult bombs toy. I think if you're a casual G.I. Joe fan, if you are more interested in the early era, this is an easy vehicle to skip. It is, if you're a figure collector, it's a very easy vehicle to skip. It's large. And, it doesn't fit all collections because of that. Now, if you're a 90s kid Yeah, absolutely. For completionists, yeah, don't worry about skipping it. It's a affordable toy. And it has some fun. It has some functionality. It belongs on the battlefield with your Cobra Troopers attacking G.I. Joe. I stand by the 3. It's a solid 3. And, it's definitely something to consider, especially if you're looking for something to display with your 1989 and up Cobra Troopers. And that concludes this Missal for the Masses. This has been the Chaplain Sisters Motorpod, and thank you for listening. The Chaplain Sisters Motorpod is hosted by Spotify for podcasters and is available to listen there and other popular podcatchers like Apple Podcasts and Good Pods. And if you're listening to this, you already know where to find the podcast, even YouTube. Please like, share, review, comment, or otherwise interact with them, as it only helps to improve and grow this podcast. For more Chaplain Sisters Motorpod, you can find me on social media at Chaplain Joe Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and X, or you can send an email to chaplainjoepod@gmail.com. And if you're still missing Casey, you can find him at Podcast from the Pit. You can just search Podcast from the Pit on Instagram and Facebook. They have a very fun Facebook group there as well. The Chaplain Sisters Motorpod is the strange but not as strange nerdy little brother of The Pint, a pop culture podcast. And I don't say that because I see 6 bats popping out of an armored personnel carrier in front of me. And with all that said and done, one final missile for the masses. Be decent to one another.